Good evening, Amni. We interrupt this podcast of ACNH Iceland News on TV to bring you breaking news on the reason of COVID-19 study being conducted right on the online platform at SJSU. Our very own Tania is on the stand. Let's go to her now. Live for detail, Tania.
Hi, Nee. Well, it seems like the main topic for the study is surrounding the question of, is adherence to COVID-19 protocols associated with testing negative for COVID-19, where the exposure is SJSU students following the COVID-19 guidelines given by their counties, and the outcome is testing negative as a result.
How many students were involved in this study, Tania?
62 students participated in the study, Nee, and the results that came out of it were quite surprising. Can you explain to the viewers about the current situation of COVID-19?
Absolutely, Tania. Today, our guest speaker that we invite today is no other than Professor Priya. Thank you for joining our call today.
I'm happy to be here, Nee.
Can you tell us and the viewers about COVID-19 and why should our audience be interested?
Well, as of today, according to the CDC, there are over 13.2 million cases in the US and almost 62.1 million globally. With this number being so high in the United States alone, this issue is not something to be taken lightly, and everyone should be aware of the altitude of this disease. COVID-19 first emerged in China and quickly spread throughout the nation and soon to other countries. Currently, it is having a big impact on the US population. Many say this is due to the government's initial downplaying reaction of how severe this health crisis would really be. A lot of these cases became much more severe, and it was sowed distrust in our government's decisions and their plans in control of this pandemic. COVID-19 has impacted individuals in many ways, such as their physical health, mental health, and economic stability. Social media has also taken a big role as well during this crisis. There have been an overload in the misinformation that is being distributed within communities, which have also contributed to the uncertainty of this health crisis.
Wow, that's quite disheartening to say the least. And you said those cases are climbing every day?
Yep, these cases have been increasing exponentially in the past few months, especially after the big holidays like the Labor Day, Veterans Day, and Halloween.
So everyone should still continue to socially distance, wear masks, and sanitize often.
Oh God, I forgot you were live, Tania. Miss you there. And now for a quick commercial break. Stay tuned for more news. So welcome back, viewers. Priya, can you tell us more about this study you conduct around SJSU students and their adherence to COVID-19 protocols?
Of course. My team and I sent out surveys to about 130 students and heard back from about 62 of them. Our survey was formatted so that we could differentiate our overall results to those students who were in health science majors compared to those of other majors. 22 of our responders are currently in a major under the Department of Health and Human Sciences, and 40 of them are in another major. We also looked at which source of news was most common in this population. Our results showed us that the majority of population gets their COVID-19 updates from social media. In our study, we also asked a series of questions to these college students, which ultimately allowed us to compare how seriously the students who were in healthcare science majors compared to other majors take the coronavirus.
Wow, that's real interesting. Can you explain some of the data you got from that?
Wow, Tania, when did you get here?
Through the power of the internet? Moving on, here are some tables and charts of the descriptive statistics. According to students by year pie chart, there were a lot of seniors in the study at around 38.7% of the sample population, followed by 13 sophomores and juniors at 20.96% each, then freshmen at 9.68%, those who have been at SJSU for more than 5 years at 1.61%. Finally, there's at 1.61% where it remains empty. Next, students by major. It seems like your students were separated by major whether or not they were in the Department of Health and Human Sciences, with 22 out of 67 in the Health and Human Science Department, and the remaining 40 weren't.
That's correct. How did you...
Here's also a table and chart of the sources students used, their knowledge of and how they're following COVID-19 protocols, contact with essential workers, traveling and outdoor dining, individually and with others.
Okay. Thank you for your help. We also have one additional chart which shows their results for COVID-19.
Wow, only one person test positive out of all those people?
Yes, but I think what's more surprising was that a majority of the participants haven't taken a COVID-19 test, sitting at a percentage of 66.1. We also have some 2x2 tables to help in the comparison of the exposure and outcome variables. As you can see, our calculations for the individuals that tested negative were the ones who had a good understanding of COVID protocols versus the one individual who had an average understanding and tested positive for the virus. We had one student who tested positive from both tables, but there are actually more students who haven't tested for COVID-19 at all, compared to the groups who tested positive or negative combined.
I see that you have some charts here. Is it comparing participant by major?
That's right. These show that 0.46 students have a good knowledge of COVID-19 protocols for the students of majors in the Department of Health Sciences, compared to those who are in other majors, which tides over to health science majors being 1.037 times more likely to follow these protocols compared to those who are not in the health science department.
Interesting. So basically, those who learn about the healthcare system are more likely to work with this information because they are exposed to it in their class. In addition, because they are more understand why these protocols are put into place. In order to protect the public health, they are more likely to follow this protocol.
However, in the charts, you can see amongst both groups that even though there are a lot of more people who don't understand COVID-19 protocols, they still do their best to follow them. And by the looks of it, it's over majority.
Yup, precisely.
What about these? Why did you decide to focus on the subject of outdoor dining in your study?
There has been a lot of skepticism and hesitancy surrounding outdoor dining services, especially if you dine with people who you've been in isolation with, or with friends and family who you haven't been in isolation with. Because yes, while you'll be dining outside, there are still sometimes people walking around, not necessarily maintaining that social distancing of 6 feet. But what's curious is, according to these charts, those in the health science department are more likely to participate in outdoor dining both individually and with others in the past 30 days. The prevalence of cases of those with majors in health sciences department who participated in outdoor dining individually and with others is 1.715 times and 2.771 times respectively.
Does that mean outdoor dining is safe if health and human science majors are doing it? Because on both charts, over 50% of health and human science majors have participated in outdoor dining, and there even is a slight increase in percentage in the chart that indicates dining with others. On the other hand, those that don't have a health and human science major indicates a decrease in percentage when comparing dining individually versus with others.
I think until more study are conducted, we should stay still caution when engaging in dining service. Is it better to cook at home or grab curbside pickup than risking it?
Okay, what's different about this next table that you got here?
On these next few charts, we compared students by years, separating freshmen and sophomore into the younger category and everyone else as older. We found that in both tables that younger students had a higher percentage of not only grasping a good foundation of COVID-19 protocols, but also following said protocols.
What's your opinion about younger students having the tendency to follow such COVID procedure?
Well, I would commend them for doing their part in mitigating the spread of the virus because we've seen that COVID doesn't just target those with immunodeficiencies or of the elderly population. Recently, there has been a climb in cases amongst children, so COVID-19 is a very dangerous and relevant topic for those who are just starting college.
I see your point. There has been more students who are applying in majors relevant to health science, so they have more opportunities to come into contact with those with COVID-19, getting a front row seat on how serious we have to treat this pandemic, especially in counties like LA, Orange County, or Santa Clara County.
Overall, how did you feel about your study? What is successful? What went well?
I think we had a good turnout of SJSU students who participated in the study. To those we sent out to, a majority of our participants had completed our survey. Also, since our convenient and easy-to-use survey was mostly quantitative, it was easy to calculate the data and read the results. Lastly, we had a good versatility in the questionnaire that targeted a multitude of aspects of how students are dealing with COVID-19.
My turn. What were some potential limitations in your study? Were there any sort of biases that you encountered or took note of?
Since the study was based on a convenient sample, we didn't get enough SJSU students to have a representative sample of the total student population because we were trying to generalize our study's results to all SJSU students. Also, our sample size is comparatively small due to the limited public reach. Thus, our sample has a tendency to skew data and not give a representative sample of the source population. As for selection bias, we have some exclusion bias because our team of students deliberately didn't send the survey to that many public health students because many of them might be in the same class without even knowing about it. If they were to collectively send their surveys to their classmates, students might have the obligation to fill in the survey twice, which we wanted to avoid.
Were there any trouble for those filling out the surveys or for your team who was collecting the results?
There might have been some Hawthorne or reporting bias in our survey. For example, some students might not fill in honestly because of guilt, so they'll fudge up their answers and say, hey, I do follow all the public health COVID regulations at 5 on the spectrum of answers when their answers might have been 3 or 4 on the scale. Also, while there is less likely of a recall or reporting bias for our survey questions regarding traveling and outdoor dinings, there might be a higher chance for the questions asking if the student is in contact with essential workers, because they themselves at times are not certain of another person's occupation.
Very briefly, was there any violation of ethics?
No. When we were conducting our survey, we were clear about the purpose of our study, and the completion of it was never forced but remained voluntary throughout all of our participants.
Was there any prior study that you compared to at the end of your research?
Yes. There were a couple that we found that did similar studies like LA. The one on the left is from LA and the one on the right is our study. Both of these charts are comparative of data between students related to healthcare sciences and other majors. A little bit of background information on the study by LA was that the survey was sent out to Italian undergraduate students, and they found that those students who are in life science majors had good levels of understanding regarding the epidemic, which we found similar in our study.
Thank you for your insight on your research. I think we all learned a great deal today.
It's been my pleasure to be here this evening.
I reckon there's a few more questions left to ask you, the last leg of our interview with you today. So overall, did your study answer your research question? And what did you find interesting in your results?
From our findings, we found that students in the Department of Health Sciences were more likely to follow COVID-19 protocols than students in other majors by 1.037 times. However, they were also 1.715 times more likely to participate in outdoor dining and even 2.771 times more likely to eat out with other people. As for comparing by years, younger students consisting of freshmen and sophomores are 1.225 times more likely to have a good knowledge of COVID protocols and 1.241 times more likely to adhere to these protocols than older students, consisting of juniors, seniors, and above. Lastly, we found that one participant who tested positive to have some interesting results. They were not confident in their knowledge of COVID-19 protocols, yet they confidently stated that they strictly followed it. They also had some contradictory information, so we thought that this participant might be an outlier.
Was your study important considering all the other COVID-19 study out there, and why does it matter?
We consider the study important because some departments at SJSU seem to lack the awareness of COVID-19 in regards to which protocols should be followed, such as outdoor dining, traveling, how much knowledge they have, and if these protocols are actually being followed. We also realize that there is a lack of testing among San Jose State students, which could be due to the negative connotations such as how painful it is, the fear of testing positive, and how accessible centers are. We found that this is a problem that needs to be addressed, and it should be more encouraged amongst students to get tested.
As a result of your study and your finding, what are some potential solutions that you consider to address the problem that you mentioned earlier?
The problem that needs to be addressed is how individuals should accurately adhere to each protocol that is suggested, and that is through researching and knowledge. By understanding the importance of why we are wearing face masks and why we must social distance and why we must stay vigilant when disinfecting is not to only help yourself in containing the virus, but to also help your surrounding community.
Thank you so much for your time, Professor Priya. I hope your endeavors remain fruitful in the coming month. Once again, I would like to thank you for sharing your findings with us this evening. Anyway, that is our time for today, folks. I'm your host, Nee.
And this is your lovely co-host, Tania.